Welcome to this presentation of Seraphim Revisited. This concert is entitled Women Who Spoke Up. My name is Carson Kuhlman. I'm the composer in residence at the Memorial Church at Harvard University, and today I'm here to facilitate a conversation with the two composers whose works are on this rebroadcast, Shruthi Rajesekar, Richard Clark, and music director of Seraphim and founder Jennifer Lester. Thank you all for being here. Let's start with the composers talking a little bit about the texts and the inspiration behind their pieces. Shruthi, could you speak a little bit about Nevertheless and the impetus for the text that you chose, which is obviously a crucial part of what the piece became?
Yes, thank you for having me. Thank you for inviting me back. And thank you for that question, Carson. In the case of Nevertheless, the sentiment came from exploring what Nevertheless She Persisted meant, which was actually the title and theme of Seraphim's concert. So at first, my explorations of this sort of came from a personal side, and I was considering setting my own text and finding other texts that interacted with it. But as I was doing more research about this slogan and what it means, I decided to return to the moment that it was uttered in the Senate. So I've actually done a setting of the US Congressional record in which Senate Republicans silenced Senator Elizabeth Warren when she was speaking during a Senate hearing. And essentially this sentence was actually uttered in sort of a not very pleasant way. Senator Mitch McConnell was summarizing the interaction for the record, and he basically said, here's what transpired. She was given a warning. Nevertheless, she persisted. So that is where Nevertheless She Persisted. And perhaps to his chagrin, this turned into this sort of subverted into this feminist slogan and became a statement, a timeless statement of women enduring in spite of the circumstances. But the fact of the matter is she was in fact silenced during that hearing, and so they did get their way in that incident. But of course, as we know, she's such a remarkable role model for so many of us. Senator Warren has continued to persist in the face of so many things, and we premiered this piece right before Super Tuesday when a lot of things changed, but I am so in awe of her great work for the state of Massachusetts and for our country and the way she advances it, and she represents so many things to so many of us.
Richard, could you talk a little bit about the poem that you set for your piece and how that choice and the text came about?
Sure. Chris Kinsley is the author of the poem. Interestingly, I haven't really spoken directly to him. We've had very little correspondence, just a little here and there. He's in Birmingham, Alabama. The poem was found by Jennifer. She showed it to me, submitted it to me. There have been a couple of recordings, fantastic, where the poem is done in a rap style. And I looked at some of those. Absolutely fantastic presentation. Looked through the poem, and I was pretty immediately blown away by it. It's fairly long too, which also presents a bit of a compositional challenge and opportunity at the same time. We went just to be sure, kind of looked around at other possibilities, but really it was clear this was the poem to do. What is so interesting about it is it's a story that's so well known. It's a very common biblical story, but it is turned backwards, where it is from the point of view of the Samaritan woman herself. And you hear, the poem is many of her inner voices. So one of the devices I use is composed for a soloist, particularly for an incredible artist, Anna Ward, an amazing soprano with incredible range. She truly took on the part and truly acted the part in presentation. There's also, I evoked what seems like a Greek chorus throughout. And the beginning, the Greek chorus is mostly in very low registers because it's articulating her anxiety. So it's actually sung all by men at the very beginning. It becomes lighter and lighter and lighter as the piece goes on. But very much of it is her inner voice, her own anxieties of being judged, being condemned, being not worth anything, not being worthy. And she has an encounter goes to the well in the middle of the day to avoid running into anyone. What's the reason for that? Well, there's a reason for that. She doesn't want to be embarrassed by anything. She runs into Jesus, and she is shocked and has really something of an epiphany that not only is she not condemned, he looks at her, acknowledges her, and perhaps this has not happened. Now, the fact that we have to have this conversation, that this is something difficult for people in general, for women, for anyone, to not be known. There's the text that often comes up as a bit of a refrain. That's really in the poetry itself. To be known is to be loved, and to be loved is to be known. To be known, to be recognized, to have the dignity. There was no judgment. There was no condemnation. And there's an epiphany about halfway through where she assumes she's going to be judged. She describes herself as an outcast, beyond an outcast, as unclean. Very harsh words. She has incredibly harsh words for herself. She assumes she's going to be condemned, and then very quietly, there's no chorus, there's no organ, there's nothing, just the one solo voice. But you don't. First part of the piece, silence, and we continue on where then she becomes really one of the first evangelists, a woman who is an evangelist and spreads the word about it. And there's so many intricate layers of the text. The text has many, many intricate layers. So there's it's chamber music between the organ, between the SATB chorus, throughout the piece. And it was one of the most incredible experiences to be able to write on this poem, to keep at it day after day and to premiere it. Anna Ward was just a phenomenal artist, took on that role. Ironically, this is composed by two men, okay? Chris and me, two middle-aged white guys. Here we are. And we took this on, and this is good for us. We need to do this. And Jennifer was the impetus for this. Anna was the person that I had her voice. I mean, it's a great thing to have Jennifer's conducting and her phrasing and her directing in my head while I'm creating this, and Anna's voice in my head while I'm creating this. And then it comes to that. It's a special privilege, but Chris's poem was really quite something. So that alone should be looked at.
Jennifer, could you talk a little bit about the interpretation process that goes into working with a composer and the new piece? Obviously, you and Richard have worked together many, many times over many years, whereas this was your first collaboration with Shruthi. So you're sort of people at different edges of the time scale of working with you and Seraphim. But obviously, this is a big part of what you do is working with the composers on new pieces.
Yes, I would say you're right about the history I have with Richard going. No, I can't count how many years at this point back, and I would say most of it was commissions, wasn't it, Richard? I think most of them were commissioned works.
Yeah, all commissioned. Yeah,
with just a couple of exceptions, and we have a similar spiritual bent, so we're kind of already halfway there in terms of working with each other. With Shruti, we did a little bit of back and forth, a lot of emailing and whatnot, because that was before I'd even knew that Zoom existed or anything like that. And but I loved her language, and both of them very good about putting a lot of things in the score in terms of what they want without a conductor feeling micromanaged. So it makes her. I've had no problem working. I've never had to go head to head with Richard on anything he wanted in a score. It was pretty obvious, and working with Shruti was equally wonderful and very satisfying, and I appreciate the experience with both of you.
And I'm sure we'll appreciate live music making and such all the more when we're able to actually get back to it. These sorts of things at least keep reminding listeners and audience and members to sort of remind us what we're missing while still providing something exciting. So it'd be wonderful to hear these works again. Extremely timely, certainly. Maybe always timely, but feels especially so at the moment. Some things never change, but some things get more intense. So here we are right now. Good theme for the moment. And we certainly hope that you will enjoy hearing these two wonderful pieces. Thank you both so much for being here. And of course, Jennifer, for whom none of this would exist without your continued vision and commitment. So thank you all so much.
Thank you.
Thank you, Carson.
Thank you for having me. It's so good to see you all again.
Likewise.
In person someday again.
Amen to that.
Pro She